Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, it is an honor to me to introduce and welcome to our Dean of the Faculty of Law Universitas Pajajaran, Dr. Idris SHMH. Good morning. And Honorable Justice Michael Wilson, retired Associate Judge from the Hawaii Supreme Court as speaker today. Good morning, sir. And Mr. Peter Barnett as Head of Climate and Energy from Climate Earth. Good morning. And Mrs. Grita Nindarini as Deputy Program Director from Indonesia Center of Environmental Law. Good morning. And another invited guest, lecturer, student, and all participants, as well as those who are watching live in Fakultas Hukum Universitas Pajajaran channel on YouTube channel, to the public lecture on climate change law, the intersection between climate change and human rights. This public lecture was initiated by collaboration between Faculty of Law Universitas Pajajaran and Indonesia Center of Environmental Law. The public lecture brings together academia, researcher, practitioner, and community who are responsible for save the Earth from the crisis climate challenge. And again, good morning, everyone. My name is Anissa Ayu, attended by your Master of Ceremony today. Welcome to a public lecture on climate change law, the intersection between climate change and human rights. Ladies and gentlemen, before we begin, allow me to read the main agenda of the public lecture today. We will begin by an opening speech, give souvenir and documentation, followed by the core of the public lecture, documentation, and a close of the ceremony. Let us now begin. Distinguished guests, faculty member, participant, ladies and gentlemen, as the host of the public lecture today, we are now going to listen the welcome speech delivered by the Dean of Faculty of Law Universitas Pajajaran. Please welcome Dr. Idris SHMH. The floor is yours.
Bismillah. Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. The Excellency Mr. Justice Michael Wilson, retired judge from the Hawaii Supreme Court, as the main speaker today, and of course we are very happy. And also the Honorable Peter Barnett, as head of climate and energy from the client Earth. Thank you. And also Dr. Grita Anindarini, Deputy Program Director from Indonesian Center of Environmental Law, and the team, and also other invited guests, my beloved student from some subject, but hopefully we invited some students to come here to hear and to discuss, because this is a special day. We have just accepted two prominent speaker, Mr. Justice and also Mr. Peter Barnett, and my colleague Dr. Nadia, Dr. Candidate Tajul, and also team Fatia, Anissa, and my team of student, and also technical staff who always help us in terms of general lecture and also other program. Mr. Justice Michael Wilson and Peter Barnett, as we know that UN Convention 1992 said that climate change is a common concern of humankind. And we have to remember that the big problem of climate change is coming from developed countries, developed countries, not developing countries. So we the conference is not enough to to control climate change, and then followed by Kyoto Protocol 1997. Yeah. So in the Kyoto Protocol has already provided some mechanism like clean development, UN implementation, and now Paris Agreement 2015. The Paris Agreement said that climate change for humankind. So people has a right to life, to get a healthy condition, to healthy environment. But in fact, climate change is very very dangerous. Yeah. So the state has obligation to control and to reduce greenhouse emission from industry and motor vehicle. So in some countries, we have a lot of problem, like landmark case in the Netherlands, what we call urgenda case, case, urgenda condition versus the government. And regional foundation, so government should be take more and more how to handle the climate change. And then this is a landmark decision from the court. And also in Australia, in America, the problem of motor vehicle is the big problem, and the government should to reduce the motor vehicle activities and industry. And how about Indonesia? So I think this is a good opportunities for us, because my student can take the science, the knowledge about the climate change, and climate change in our faculty is part of the subject international law, and also maybe some point has been discussed with the subject, other subject. So today, my student, I think good opportunity for you to discuss and to hear what is Mr. Justice experience when you are justice, because is there any case about how to intersection in interrelation between climate change and justice for humankind? So I think this is what Paris Agreement 2015 said, that climate change is part of human right, because so many violations for human right because climate change. So I think what we call the principle of common but different set responsibilities, yeah? And the principle, I think we have to explore, and hopefully Mr. Justice can share your experience, your knowledge, and hopefully our student will come again. So I think this capacity is good for us. For example, if our student more than 50 students. So hopefully Bu Nadia, maybe you can ask the student to come here, because this is a good opportunity for us, and I think this is one of implementation MOA, Memorandum of Agreement with us, Faculty of Law, and also ISL. So because my student also has good opportunity to what we call MBKM, yeah, to take experience, I mean 1 or 2 months in ISL, because our ministry said that I think okay, a theoretical basis is good, but maybe I think it's better also your student can take experience from other center like ISL. So Mr. Justice and Mr. Peter, thank again, welcome to our faculty Pajajaran. I think we are still developing everything, infrastructure, facilities, quantity, and this year, 2023, thank God, because we have got some reputation, some prestige, like we have been accredited by internationally, what we call FIBA. FIBA is lembaga institution for accreditation for study. And also we have got rank QS World Interest Ranking, rank with 300, yeah, in the world. But we still effort to get a better rank in the year, at least rank 250, yeah, because our rector always support us, please, because this is not only our program, our rector, but this is our the higher education of Indonesia, what we call it here. Again, welcome back to Mr. Justice, Mr. Peter, and Please, student, maybe you can enjoy the global lecture, because how to understand and how to involve that climate change is our problem. Yeah, if we are not okay, if a state unable to handle, humankind might be havoc. Yeah, it's very very danger. So I think this is good lecture, and hopefully student can take this good opportunity, and hopefully this is not the first general lecture from the judge, and also the opponent, the proponent, a prominent practitioner, but also maybe we can follow for the next general lecture for the sake of our student. Yeah, so I mentioned that okay, basically theory is okay, but maybe it's better for us how to look for other material, for example, from the perspective of code, and also from practitioner. Thank you, Mr. Judge, and Mr. Peter, and my college, my student. I think you can enjoy the lecture, and we can meet again with the next program. Thank you again. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Success for you. Keep healthy, keep success, and keep spirit. Terima kasih. Hatur nuhun.
Thank you for speech, Mr. Dean. Before we begin, I would like to call our speaker, Judge Wilson, to come to the podium, because for receive a souvenir and documentation with our Dean first.
Yeah, okay. Maybe you can send. Because after this.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Judge. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we have entered to the next agenda. It's a public lecture. The public lecture will be led by our moderator. Therefore, I will introduce our moderator first. Ibu Yulinda Adarani SHMH is a lecturer at the Department of Environmental, Spatial, and Agrarian Law, Faculty of Law, Universitas Pajajaran. She holds a master's degree and graduated in Environmental, Spatial, and Agrarian Law from Universitas Pajajaran. Now she also a PhD student in the law of Environmental, Spatial, and Agrarian of Faculty of Law, Universitas Pajajaran. Actually, she has an interest of environmental topic and energy. She has actively for research, writing in international and national journal. And in August 2023 later, she also joined the workshop of climate change in Universitas Indonesia with collaboration with ICEL too. Without further ado, I will call Ibu Yulinda Adarani. Ibu, the floor is yours. Keep applause.
Okay. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much, Miss Anissa, as the Master of Ceremony at today's event. It's really an honor to me to able to moderate this event this morning with the great speaker here, the Honorable Judge Wilson, and as well as the great participant and invited guests also. First of all, I want to thank you to Mr. Dean. Thank you, Pak Idris, as a Dean of Faculty Law Unpad, and the Honorable Justice Michael Wilson, representative from Client Earth, Mr. Peter Barnett, and representatives from ICEL, Mrs. Grita, and the others. And also the lecturers, Bu Nadia, Ibu Fatia, and Ibu Nisa, and the students who attend this event and held this public lecture in Unpad. As we all know, we are faced with the triple planetary crisis. It refers to the three main interlinked issues that humanity currently faces as climate change, pollution, and biodiversity loss. Each of these issues has its own case and effects and needs to be resolved to have a viable future on this planet. The triple planetary crisis challenge require innovative solutions, climate litigations, and among others has prompted many policy change. The support of various parties is certainly needed by the judiciary to face this growing litigation. Therefore, the collaboration between various parties as academia, NGOs, judges also is needed in developing innovative solutions to face the triple planetary crisis, especially the climate change. Ladies and gentlemen, climate change is really the one of most severe threats to human rights, as we know. Climate change has an actual impact on human life, and therefore today specifically we will discuss related to the intersection between climate change and human rights. Already here with us, please welcome to the Honorable Justice Michael Wilson. Please come to the stage. Big applause for His Honor. Please. But before we listen to his explanation, please allow me to read curriculum vitae first. His Honor Michael Wilson is a retired associate judge of the Hawaii Supreme Court from 2014 to 2023. His education are a Bachelor of Science from University of Wisconsin Madison in 1975 and a Juris Doctor from Antioch School of Law in Washington, D.C. in 1979. Judge Wilson, please, the time is yours. You can start the public lecture. Let's listen to the public lecture. Thank you.
Well, let me say, Sajimat Paji, good morning. It's a very good morning. It's a very good Sajimat Paji. Pagi, Sajimat Pagi. And I'll also say, aloha from Hawaii. How many of you have heard the word aloha before?
Aloha.
Okay, a few people. So aloha is a sort of special Hawaiian word that recognizes the beauty in the human spirit. And I am blessed to be amongst brothers and sisters who share very much the spirit of Hawaii, I would say, as we face the problems of climate change. In a university, Pajajaran University, that is clearly a powerful university with a powerful dean, Dean Idris, I am very honored to be here. I'm so honored you're here. This is a huge law school, I guess almost 2,000 people, and I know how busy you are. So thank you for spending time. But please feel free. I know you have other responsibilities if you do have to leave. I really appreciate that. And our moderator, I want to thank you, Ms. Adarani. Thank you for helping today. Thank you. I know you're also an important member of the teaching staff here.
Yes,
so thank you for taking the time.
It's an honor for me. Thank you.
So imagine, if you will, a situation in which we have a threat that is often called climate change, and imagine, if you will, that threat falls into the hands or becomes the responsibility of lawyers. So I hope that I'm clear when I describe the situation. It has to do with climate change and your participation. I describe it with great respect, but also an enormous amount of concern that I will explain. So raise your hand if you've heard the term climate change. Okay. And raise your hand if you have not heard the term climate change before. That's what I thought. This university knows that there is something called climate change. So if I was in your situation, and you were in a great situation at a great university, and your chairs look so comfortable, we have the University of Hawaii that has an auditorium with chairs that are not nearly as comfortable and beautiful as your chairs. And it's small. It's a small university law school, not as big as the law school that Dean Idris leads. But oh my goodness, our law students are concerned about their brothers and sisters in this room. Our law students care about you. Why? In part because you share the same struggle. S-T-R-U-G-G-L-E. You share the same struggle together. And we would be honored if any of you come to Hawaii. You should consider us a home for you too, as we do our best to come together and protect. Protect what? Protect your future or protect the planet? I've been a judge for over 20 years. I have been fortunate to work with judges all over the world. And when I have done that as a judge, there have been groups that have helped the judges. A lot of the groups are like you. The students that come here that are going to become judges. How many of you think maybe someday you'll be a judge? Raise your hand. Okay. I know it's kind of maybe you're showing off if you raise your hand and say you're going to be a judge. Or maybe you just don't think you'll ever have a chance. But in your private mind, I hope a lot of you thought, yes, I want to be a judge. Because you can be. I became a judge after doing a lot of work, like the heroic Peter Barnett, who sits here with you, the heroic members of the Indonesian Center for Environmental Law who sit here with you. These are the kind of groups that have helped judges around the world do the right thing, shall we say. And when you think about what the right thing to do is to save you from climate change, how do you do it? What kind of power is there to protect you? Your parents, that's not quite their job. The president of your country, now you're talking. Or the men or women, men and women that become judges. Now you're talking. So you're facing a struggle. So do our students face a struggle. Not a little struggle like who's going to win the cricket match, who's going to win the soccer match, who's going to win the football match. That's a struggle. This is the biggest struggle in history. Are you going to have a safe world where it's not too hot, where there's enough food, where other people don't try to take your resources? Oh my goodness, it's a big struggle. And we have those individuals who become part of a group, judges or lawyers become part of a group exercising a power. How many of you have heard that when you become an attorney, you have power? Raise your hand. Do you think you have power? What do you think? Any of you think that an attorney's powerful? Okay. Well, think about it. Do you think an attorney can go to court and do something like shut down a coal plant that might be polluting? Raise your hand if you think an attorney might be able to do that. Okay. I see a hand. That's good. Who else is going to do it? Who else has the power? That's the unusual thing about becoming an attorney, because then the law gives you a power. And it's a power that can do lots of things. If you believe in human rights, it's a great power. You can protect human rights. What's the most fundamental and important human right in the world now? Anybody have a guess? Maybe the right to a healthy environment, because your right to life depends on it. How many people think that makes sense? That maybe the right to a healthy environment is a fundamental right? Raise your hand. Okay, I'm seeing hands. Fantastic. Whose right is it? I know I look very young, but I had to retire. I am very young. But unfortunately, I don't get to be here with you all that much longer. My right to a clean, healthy environment is something I've enjoyed for a long time. And I'll be able to enjoy it for a while longer. Yours is different, right? Because you're young. So your right to a clean and healthy environment is a big issue. And it's an issue that, if you're a lawyer, you might be able to be part of the solution. The solution to the most important, you see the slide, the statement at the top, climate emergency posed by limited solution horizon. Emergency, biggest emergency. Limited solution horizon, that just means you have a limited amount of time for the solution to take place, for the attorneys of the world to take action. This is where I'm from. Hawaii, it is a state. So you've all heard of the United States. How many states does the United States have? About 50. And is Hawaii one of those 50 states? Yes. One of the 50 states of the country called the United States. And does the United States have two different court systems, one for the country and one for the states? Raise your hand if that makes sense. Exactly. Okay. So we have one overall judicial system for the country, and then we have individual judicial systems for each state. And my state is Hawaii, but it's an amazing state. In some ways, it's closer to Indonesia in terms of our spirit, our brotherhood, our sisterhood, our families. In some ways, it's closer to Indonesia than it is to states far away, because we're in the middle of the Pacific. We are part of the South Pacific, and we are part of the Asian community. And my goodness, we do have a challenge, because even though many people think we're the most beautiful place on earth, well, Indonesia has fantastic biodiversity and fantastic beauty. But look, this is a place where I spent a lot of time, and it made a big difference to me. It's so beautiful. Unfortunately, this is the island of Kauai, and unfortunately, that beach is about to be washed away in 40 or 50 years with sea level rise, unless we create a solution to climate change. And these are treasures from Hawaii, birds that are our treasures. Many of them will be gone when the earth heats up to the point where climate change creates an emergency, an even bigger emergency, an emergency that creates a collapse, where ecosystems no longer are functioning. This is a magnificent place in Hawaii that's my favorite because this is where my beach house is. How many of you have seen the ocean? Fantastic. All right. Well, then you're with me. You know, I stand here and I'm not in the ocean, but it's always with me because it's in my heart. I grew up in it. And this is my first time to Indonesia, but I've always wanted to be in the ocean and see your magnificent coral and the incredible fish that you have. Anyways, this is my beach house in Hawaii. Have any of you been to Hawaii? Okay, well, this is an important day. It's okay if you forget what I said. But one thing you'll remember is that I'm inviting you to Hawaii. Okay, so if anyone wants to leave now, that's the most important part of my lecture. But yes, you should come and you can visit me at the beach house, and we'd be honored to have law students come from Indonesia and come from Pajajaran University. Because we have to work on this together. Sui generis is a fancy legal term meaning nothing like it. There's no precedent. It's unique. It's such an important issue. So how many of you have heard the idea that the Earth should not heat up to 1.5 degrees? Okay, so let me just cover this a little bit. In the Paris Agreement that your dean referred to in 2015, the countries came together about climate change and said, we can't have a future where you have a collapse of the environment needed to sustain future generations. That was a basic idea. And they came up with a temperature that the Earth has to avoid heating up to, that humanity has to protect the Earth from heating up to. And that temperature is 1.5 degrees Celsius, which represents the change in temperature from pre-industrial times, before the industrial era, back in like the late 1800s, when it was a temperature that was approximately 1.1 degrees lower than it is now. So the idea is it shouldn't heat up to 1.5 degrees, because then it'll be too hot, and your biodiversity will be lost, more pollution, and more climate disasters. 1.5 degrees is central to my court. We wrote a decision saying you have a right to be protected from a world where the Earth heats up to 1.5 degrees. That's how important it is for us in Hawaii, and I think certainly for our brothers and sisters in Indonesia. So 1.5 degrees is a really, really important number. How do we keep that from happening? Well, one way we do it is think, okay, if we're trying to keep the Earth from heating to 1.5 degrees, one thing we want to know is, how much has it heated up already, right? Because if it hasn't heated up much, it might not be a problem. But if it's heated up a lot already, it's a big problem. So do you think it's heated up a lot already? Yeah, how close do you think it is to 1.5 degrees already? Now this will rule your life. When you go home and you see whether there's enough food in the refrigerator to protect your family, you pay attention, right? When you decide whether or not it's too hot for your children, that's also a really important fact that you need to know. So this is a good fact for you to know. We're up at 1.1 degrees global warming. Maybe if we don't do something, we'll get to 1.5 degrees in 15 years, 20 years. So at 3 degrees, which will happen at present levels of global warming, present levels of carbon emissions, because how many people realize there's a connection between the amount of carbon we put in the air and how much the Earth heats up? Raise your hand if you've heard that before. Okay, so this is a good thing for Pajarjan University to be aware of. When carbon is released from cars, when carbon is released from power plants, when carbon is released from airplanes, it causes the capture of heat. It holds heat into the planet. And what does that do? Heats up the planet. Okay, so now we're all thinking together. Carbon emissions are going up, temperature of the earth is going up, and to be able to protect the earth, we can't have it keep going up to what degree? Exactly, 1.5. We don't want it to go to 1.5 degrees. So here's a tool for you as attorneys, law students. You can go to your legislature in your state or legislature in your country and have them declare a climate emergency like Hawaii did. I'm just offering this as an example of what your protectors, because you have parents that rightfully you can expect to protect you, but your government is committed to protecting you. That's its job. So if you go to the government and say you need to formally declare that there's an emergency, that's a huge step because it starts directing the government towards protecting you from the earth heating up to, what do you think? How hot? What do you think? What's the temperature we want to avoid the earth heating up to? Exactly, 1.5 degrees. So that's what we have such a legislature that's very protective of the earth in Hawaii, and so they declared that we're in a climate emergency. And they've also created environmental courts. Now, as you may be aware, your judges in Indonesia, working with the groups that are within Indonesia that are helping, working with the Center for Environmental Law, International Center for Environmental, the Indonesian Center for Environmental Law, Climate Earth. They are groups that have come together with the judges and are focusing on what laws can be used to protect you. And one of the ways that you can be protected that Hawaii has is an environmental court where they have trained judges to make decisions about the environment. Okay, this will take you to Hawaii, where I hope you'll come and be one of our guests. This is our major city, and you see that beach? It is so valuable. It's like $2 billion a year in economic power and production. So that beach will be gone in 30 or 40 years. That's an example of the problem we have if the earth heats up to 1.5 degrees. You know, we have leaders who make statements on behalf of the whole world. How many people here have heard of the United Nations? Raise your hand. Great. Seems like everybody's heard of the United Nations. Well, the person in charge of the United Nations is Antonio Guterres, and he gave a speech about you and your future a little more than a year ago when he went to a COP, Conference of the Parties that the United Nations have. And when he was talking about your future, he talked about what's happening with climate change. And he was making the point climate change is the biggest issue facing all of humanity, bigger than the pandemic. I'm sure all of you remember the pandemic, the COVID pandemic, probably had to wear masks. He said the COVID pandemic is not as serious as what's coming for you, future generations with climate change. You don't usually see a leader, one of the top leaders in the world who's a diplomat, use words like hell H-E-L-L. I don't think any of us in this room have used that very often in our life. The select word has great power. So when he looked at the truth, we love the truth, everybody does. But if you apply the truth to climate change, then you have to say what's really happening. And when he was telling the truth, he said, we're actually on a highway to climate hell. We all are already. In Hawaii, we had a city burned to the ground a couple of months ago. 100 people burned to death. We're already in the midst of a climate emergency, but it's going to be extreme compared to the present, an extreme change in the level of an existential threat. And so that's what he's trying to say. We are on a highway to climate hell. Did he leave the idea there just to say we're on this road to not heaven, not like okay where we live today, but on the road to something in the future? It's very hard to imagine because we're on the road to climate hell. He went further and said in our foot still on the accelerator, which means we are heating up and we need to do something about it. We're on track for 3 degrees. So at 3 degrees, we won't be here. You will not have a law school, and at 3 degrees, you will not see the kind of world economy and food security that we see. It'll be so devastating. So we have to avoid that. This is a very well-known jurist internationally who often says that the most important issue facing all the judges of the world is what? What do you think? What's the most important issue facing judges in the world? What was that? Climate change. That's a big statement. So that's the biggest issue for me. That's what I mostly had to work on in my job. For 20 years, this is the one that became the most important issue. Partly because, your job in the rule of law is likely to disappear if the Earth heats up to 1.5 or 2 degrees, just because you won't have the same economy to support the rule of law, nor will you have the same security. So this is for decision makers. If you were a dinosaur and you saw the asteroids coming that were going to really make life miserable and cause you to sort of not be able to have children in the future, it'd be tough. They have little hands, there's not much they can do, the asteroid's going to land. But that's not where we are. We do have something like an asteroid that's coming, but we can do something about it. You think that poor people in the world, are most people in the world poor? Do most people live in poverty? Yes. Do they have time to do something about it? No. Do you think children can? Children are sort of like the dinosaurs, right? I mean, what can they do now if they're a child? How many children are there? Any idea if we have 8 billion people, how many children there are? Between 2 and 3? Yes. Okay, you shrug? Yeah, it's about 3 billion, 2 to 3 billion. They're innocent, and there's not much they can do, so you can't necessarily look for them to help, right? So who is it that's going to be able to take responsibility for the children that are facing this possibility? Courts. In the US, we have the state courts. Remember, I said we have state courts, 50 of them, and then we have the overall federal courts. And the courts in the United States are having to work on this issue. The federal courts are not doing a very good job in the United States because they're tending to prevent lawsuits that are brought about climate change. But our state courts are different. The state courts are establishing rights for you. Climate rights, human right to what? A stable climate capable of supporting human life, which is part of the right to life. This is a well-known Supreme Court justice from India who talks about utilizing this power that you have, not young people who are mostly poor, but you. Everybody in this room has been given a blessing of being able to go to a great university and a law school and eventually be given, what are you all going to get just by coming to this law school? What are you all going to get that's more powerful than a nuclear device? Oh, okay, thank you. Thank you. Oops, I was wandering in the wrong place. I haven't already. Peter has it. Thank goodness. The Indonesian Center for Environmental Law has it. Like I said, it's more powerful than a nuclear device. I mean, we love weapons. You know, you look at Star Wars and you see the lightsaber. That's pretty cool. But it's not nearly as cool. It's not as unbelievable as what you're going to get. Because when you get the license to practice law, you could protect your family and the planet by protecting a forest. Or you can protect somebody's freedom. Maybe they're charged with a crime, but they didn't commit it. You step forward with your right to go to court. The power of the rule of law that you're going to be given gives you a chance to join our struggle and be able to really protect what? Your families, but also protect the environment. Protect your right to a stable climate capable of supporting human life. Now, how about being a judge? I guess you probably see judges, but we get extra power. We don't just have a license to practice law, then we get extra power because we get to decide what's right and wrong. And there are more and more judges that have an idea how to do that. They come from different backgrounds. Sometimes they come from poor communities, sometimes they're women, sometimes they're indigenous people. More and more of them are getting the supercharged power of being a judge. Well, it's not power you can use any way you want, because you have to take an oath to follow the law. And that law, as I say, is something that really defines right and wrong for us. Is it right for, let's say, a company? This is an interesting word. It's your word that doesn't work anymore. If I talk about the oil companies, you think about company. But then if I say there are these new organizations that are more powerful than countries, that don't have the kind of regulation that a country would have, because, you know, you have a way to be able to control your government, right? You can vote, elect people. No, if there are new organizations that are even more powerful than a lot of countries out there, do you call them companies? Maybe what you call them is empires. And when you look at political science, and you go on YouTube, you will see, wow, there's this new group that controls your life that's so powerful. Unfortunately, they engage in an activity that creates global warming, right? Because they're oil companies, and they are being brought to court. So judges have to decide what to do in cases like that. If the oil company is doing something wrong, should they be, by wrong, I mean in violation of the law, should they be allowed to continue? If you're a judge, should you allow them to continue? Your oath is to follow the law. So if the citizens of Indonesia, if the graduates of Pajajaran University theoretically have protection, you theoretically have protection in your life from a right. We talked about the right that's been established in the United States and some state courts. If you have the protection of the right to a stable climate capable of protecting your life, and it looks like an action of one of these empires is violating that right, should the judge be concerned about power? Should the judge be concerned about doing the right thing? All the judge has to do is follow the law. But if that law is being violated, then the judge is supposed to intervene and protect you. You need to have judicial independence. No matter how strong the government is, no matter how strong the empires are, how strong are they in your court, if you are a judge, they're just as strong as the poor child that has no education. The rights are supposed to be the same. Now, this is an interesting case because when I was on the court, the very powerful party in the case, the issue in the court was whether a gigantic project should be built on a mountain, and it happened to be a telescope. Whether it should be built. And for a little state like Hawaii, the idea of building something that's going to add almost $1 billion to the economy, do you think that's important? You're big citizens. You're big people. In the eyes of Hawaiians, you're strong and you're powerful and you're bigger than we are. How many people are in your country? How many 100 million? Yeah, about 200 million people. When you get a law degree in this country, you're with such a powerful country. How many people do you think live in Hawaii? We have 1.8 million people. You have 200 million people. When we get our law degree, we think it's special, of course. But if you're a lawyer from Indonesia that shows up in Hawaii, your power with your rule of law, you see what I'm saying? It's really impressive. But if you look at the situation we were in our little state, in our court of 5 people had to decide whether this telescope should be built at the cost of $1 billion. Do you think there was a lot of pressure from the very wealthy, powerful interests that wanted to build the telescope? You think they had a lot of well-paid lawyers? And on the other side, you had indigenous people, Hawaiians. They didn't have much in the way of resources. So I'm sitting in my office one day when we're considering what to do in the case, and I get a message from one of the officials of the state. The state wanted the telescope. So one of the officials sent me an email asking me if I wanted to talk to him about the case. This puts everything out of balance because it takes your power away. That power you have with your license doesn't matter if somebody has special connections and they can go to the court and talk to the court about it and tell the court what to do, right? Anyway, so I got this message and I publicly ordered all the parties to not contact me and not contact the court. And there was an article, this is one of the many articles in our paper about it. Huge story. Why is that important? Because it was a message to young people that are poor. It was a message to people that don't think they have any power. That in our court they do. We're going to treat everybody fairly. So this is a very exciting part of your judiciary. You have the chance to make sure that your judiciary doesn't perpetuate injustice and that they make sure that they only make decisions based on the evidence before them and that they're not allowed to go around and take additional evidence and talk to people secretly. Now, I'll just mention this because when you think about the power of the rule of law, it can be used for good. But man, I mean, it's a explosive power for bad. It's a destructive power that can create a long-lasting change in society too. In the United States, the government decided to incarcerate everybody that's Japanese. That's big, because we have a lot of Japanese people in the United States. This is during World War II. So you could do a thought experiment now. In your private moment, think to yourself, who am I? What do you identify with? If we decided we were going to incarcerate everybody from Indonesia, oh my goodness, that wouldn't make sense. Because just because you're from Indonesia doesn't mean you think one way. So this went to the Supreme Court, and unfortunately our Supreme Court agreed that it was okay. Now, that was a long time ago, 1950s or 40s, and we agree now that it was wrong. We don't want that to happen. So it's a good thing to keep in mind. You have fantastic justices like this judge. His grandfather was, any guess? He's a black justice from the United States. Guess what his grandfather was? You probably don't know that much about U.S. history, but you won't forget this. Guess what his grandfather was in the United States? Have you ever heard of slavery, where you can buy and sell people and their families and their children? In the United States, his grandfather was a slave. Does that mean you can change the law for the good? Yes. At one point, slavery was legal in the United States. Do you think it's legal now? If somebody wanted to, buy some citizens from Indonesia and then sell them as slaves in the United States, do you think that would work? All of you have been trained to think in terms of justice, to know that's wrong. He ended up on the Supreme Court of the United States. The grandson was on the Supreme Court of the United States, and he freed a lot of people from discrimination when he wrote a decision that said education based on race is unequal. You can't separate people in schools based on whether they're white or black. So we have courts now that are strong. Even in the federal courts of the United States, we have courts that are recognizing your right to a stable climate capable of supporting human life. We have courts that will allow you to use your power. When you go there and say, I'm representing future generations, and what's being done now is causing the earth to heat up, and we have to do something about it. We can't let government keep doing this, causing the earth to heat up. You can be listened to in different courts around the world. This is a statement from a judge that's very concerned about the judges that won't protect you, the judges that don't recognize the right to a stable climate. Where this judge said that the world has suffered for that idea, that we're not going to protect the environment in the courts. Okay, you're privileged, because can you go into the courtroom if you have a law degree? Can you go right up to the judge? Well, in a sense, can you go into the judge's courtroom if you have a law degree and you have a case? Does the judge have to allow a lawyer into the courtroom if the judge is hearing that lawyer's case? Can the judge say, I don't really like you, you just leave the courtroom and maybe I'll look at your pleadings, but I'm going to listen to this other lawyer? Absolutely not. With your power, you tell the judge. You don't tell him, you don't need to tell him or her, but with that law degree, you tell the judge, I'm here. The judge is only in charge of so much. Can the judge commit injustice? Can the judge rule against the law? Can the judge take your families away from you without a legal excuse? Can the judge take your freedom away from you without a legal excuse? Wow, you have so much protection and power if you've got an attorney standing there with you. That usually helps. That's how far things have gone in terms of being good in the courts. So the judge's job is to listen to you. Now, you can't be disrespectful, of course. I'm just talking about if you're doing your job. If you come in with a position the judge doesn't like, can the judge tell you to leave? No. Then he's in violation of the law. This idea of being able to show up, to have access, to state what's right, it's really important. Now, our United States Supreme Court has violated that rule in the sense of not allowing people into court that should be allowed into court. And see that picture? These are young people in the United States that have demonstrated on the steps of the United States Supreme Court because they're saying the court's not listening to them, not doing its job, particularly in certain cases in which the court is not allowing access to the court. I'll just show the picture here of Justice Kagan. It's nice to see the human beings on the Supreme Court that are doing a great job. We have 3 women that are working really hard that don't agree with the majority necessarily. But they're important symbols for all of you that you can write a dissent if you're a judge. You can explain what the law should be if the majority appears to be making a mistake. And this is happening all over the country where young people are coming with their lawyers and they're saying, we have this right. We have this right to a stable climate capable of supporting human life. And then you have judges that are uncomfortable with this idea. Maybe they're close to the oil industry. Maybe they just don't like the idea of you having another right. In any case, there are other judges that will disagree with them, fortunately, that I think are on the side of the future, on recognizing your right. So on the left is you. I mean, and this is the story of David versus Goliath. Goliath was a huge warrior, famous, always won. And you had this little guy who was just a villager whose name is David. And he's up against Goliath. This is a famous story told all around the world. And Goliath does have a weapon. He's got this really small little slingshot with a rock. So is this a story of injustice where the bad guy always wins? Oh no, it's the opposite. Because who wins? He's really good with that slingshot. He gets focused. He knows what he's doing. He knows what he's doing is right. And he gets Goliath with the rock where? Right between the eyes. Okay, so he wins. This is you. You have a weapon now. Actually, you're more powerful than David because you're going to have, what are we talking about? Your license to practice law, the rule of law, the kind of weapon that's more powerful than a nuclear device. But you are up against the, what do we call them? The empires. You can't really call them a company. Now, when you go to your business law classes, when you go to your corporate law classes, think about how the law is evolving around the world if you are an empire. It's a little different than just being a company in many ways. You get special rights, like the empire of oil in the United States, even though they're the most profitable industry in the world, they received extra money from the government of the United States. That's how powerful the empire is. How much money? Over $1 billion. In the world, the empire corporations received how much? In subsidies given to them by governments, even though they're already the most profitable companies. Over $1 trillion in 2021, the year after the pandemic. So this Goliath on the other side is big, but not necessarily so big that justice won't prevail. How many people here have heard of Mahatma Gandhi? Okay, that's cool. So a lot of people in Indonesia know about Mahatma Gandhi. He was the father of India. What an amazing, not just amazing, it's a story that doesn't make sense. How could this little guy, skinny guy, older guy, not like me, older, without even weapons, convince his countrymen and women to support him to be able to cause the strongest country on earth to leave India? Did this really happen? I mean, you think about it and you realize, wow, I can do a lot. Even when the power is being used wrongly against me, I can do a lot. All of you can. You don't know how much I believe in you. I was a drug court judge in which for years I was working with people that had addictions that would come into my court, overcome their addictions. They had mental health issues, strong mental health problems, sometimes mental health problems, and they're addicted. And with the right treatment, they walked out of my courtroom. Some of them became lawyers. You don't have addictions. You're not drug addicts. You aren't mentally ill. You are so powerful. I know that because I know how strong the human spirit is. You may take each other for granted because you've got a lot of impressive people around you. You're going to this impressive university. Doesn't seem like you're doing anything special and that you're not special. No way. You are all extraordinary to have just gotten to this place. So I agree with Mahatma Gandhi. You just need a small body of determined spirits like the people in this room, and you can change the course of history to protect yourselves and your families. And so our court, my court, did recognize that fundamental constitutional right that you have to a stable climate capable of supporting human life, so you will have this power, I hope, someday in Indonesia, and it's a power that's been recognized by another state, Montana, recently. These are lots of cases that recognize that type of power. And I'm concluding now with what this is all about. I mean, we really do care about children. A lot of us care about coral biodiversity too, but it's easy to understand we can't let a future be decided that's going to hurt the young people. And we don't have to. Young people are stepping forward. Raise your hand if you've heard of Greta Thunberg. Okay, good. If you haven't heard of Greta Thunberg, Google her. It'll give you hope. She stepped forward to protect you and to organize young people to say, we need to confront government, make sure government changes to get enough carbon out of the air to keep the earth from heating up. Roger Hallam organized a really great organization that also is meant to protect future generations. Then you have the people that sacrifice their what? What's the most important resource you have? Do you have a resource more important than your life? If you give up your life, not much matters, right? And you have environmental defenders all over the world that are standing up for you, trying to protect the environment, protect their ancestral homelands, and what happens to them? According to the United Nations, 3 of them are killed every week. So as you go through your week, and you're getting ready to get the weapon, the power, the tool, the right to practice law, as you're going through your week, maybe you can think, I hope I can do something about the next person that's going to be killed. Because, as we sit here, our system of justice doesn't protect a lot of the people that are standing up to keep their forests from being cut down illegally, that are standing up to keep the iron mines, the mineral mines, that are contaminating their drinking water to keep them from conducting that business. They get killed. And who protects them? Edwin Choate is an example. He was a great guy who was protecting his mahogany trees. He sacrificed his life because the industry that was illegally cutting down the forest took him out into a clearing with his father-in-law, and they murdered him because they thought they were sending a message that the law won't apply to them. They're too powerful. However, things happen. This great justice on the left is Louis Tolosa from where? Colombia. He flew from Colombia to Peru to talk to the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Peru to help her understand the importance of prosecuting the killers. I was very interested in this because Louis Tolosa was protecting us. We have indigenous people. He was protecting the idea that we need to treat everybody equally, even if you're poor, even if you're indigenous. And on the right is a brave lawyer that represented Louis Tolosa. And then next to, that represented Edwin Chota. And next to Louis Tolosa is Edwin Chota's wife. So these are brave people that hopefully will get your help as time goes on to apply the rule of law. This might be the best judge in the world. Dhananjaya Chandrachud. If you had somebody who could become the best judge in the world, and you were in charge of the world, and you wanted that person to have power as a judge, the best person to be the best judge in the world, where would you put them? You, if you're from Indonesia, would put them here. Probably. But if you were in charge of the world, where would you put them? You would put this person at the most powerful court in the world with the biggest country. India is the biggest country. And so, if you want to think that you can change the world, this is a great example. This is a miracle. Dhananjaya Chandrachud ended up being the Chief Justice of the most powerful court in the world, and at least from my experience, he's the best. Say a prayer of thanks to whoever you say prayers to. A miracle happened. It's an incredible thing during the time that we are lawyers, during the time that we are the protectors of the planet. Whoa, that gives you hope. And he has to stand up to Prime Minister Modi. He has to stand up to Congress. And he's just a very nice person with great what? Courage, courage, courage. That's what you need. The best judges have courage. They're not the ones that necessarily are the smartest. They're not the ones that necessarily are the most fun to listen to. They have courage because they will know no matter what happens, they're going to stand up for whoever the children are that are living in poverty, on the edge of survival, as well as stand up for the new group that's helping control your future that we've talked about here in the auditorium of this great university. And who's that new group? The empires. He also has to apply the law fairly to the empires. They came to our court. This is the Chief Justice of India that came to help Hawaii. Isn't that cool? That's the other thing that's happening. I was invited to your great country. Who would think that I'd be a Pajajaran University? It's a wonderful thing. I was invited all the way across the ocean. We think about you in Hawaii. You don't come see us very much, and that's okay. You have things to think about, but you've got a lot of people, and you're a powerful country. So we would love to collaborate with you. And we are collaborating now with your courts, thanks to Client Earth, and thanks to the Indonesian Center for Environmental Law. If you're lucky, you might get a chance to work with them too. So this is the end. These are the students that are like some of you that are listening to me. They're not going to give up. They know they can prevail. They're in India. They're at the major law school in India, Jindal Global Law School. They're not going to give up. They're going to keep working at it. They're joining with law students like you. If you want to join with them, let me know. I will help you. They're incredibly exciting. They're going to make sure India takes action to reduce carbon emissions enough to protect them and their families. They have a great collaboration with us. So this is my second to the last slide. You know, I look like a regular guy, but actually, as much as the ocean and coral have affected me, I've been very affected by the tiger. Oh, it's an amazing animal. I could tell you about it. But in India, I was given this pin in India by the World Wildlife Foundation of India. They have environmental defenders like Edwin Chota that regularly are assassinated because they're protecting what? My tigers. You have tigers. And maybe some of you will step forward to try to protect those tigers. And if they're protected, it means you protect biodiversity and you protect a really big ecosystem to have a tiger. So that's my plug for my favorite animal and to ask you to help me be the defenders of the tiger. Let me know if you need my help. And I would love to go with you into the forest in Indonesia and find your tigers. So, aloha is a word we use in Hawaii to a respected audience. I'm sorry I've gone on for so long, but I couldn't help it. It's very nice here. You guys are great. It was really fun for me. And you can see how beautiful Hawaii is, but it's not quite as big and powerful as Indonesia. So please help us. Aloha and thank you.
Big applause, please. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Judge Wilson, for the very insightful lecture today. I think the student has the same idea with me. You encourage them to take a part in climate change, to tackle the climate change. Yeah, okay. Now we will welcome participants to ask the question. Maybe 1, 2, 3. Oh, there's many. Great. There's many of you will ask the question. First, maybe introduce yourself first. Please introduce yourself first.
Thank you, Mister. Let me introduce myself. My name is Shalomita, and thank you for semua materi yang disampaikan. I have a question. Indonesia has experienced environmental crimes many times, such as Kalimantan and Sumatra forest fires, lumpur lapindo, which causes death, dan itu memberikan pelanggaran hak asasi manusia sampai kepada pendidikan, kematian dan lain sebagainya gitu. Jadi udah muncul diskusi tentang ecocide. So that's how Hawaii recognize ecocide as a serious human rights violence, kejahatan kemanusiaan di samping genosida dan juga kejahatan kemanusiaan itu sendiri, dan mengapa hingga saat ini dunia belum mengakui ekosida sebagai kejahatan kemanusiaan yang berat dalam Statuta Roma. Mungkin itu pertanyaannya. Sekian dan terima kasih.
Okay, thank you, Salomita. He mix the English and bahasa. So I will explain to you about the environmental crimes in Indonesia, wildfire, and we have also many cases about the environmental that gives an effect for the human rights, and the Shalom stated that the ecocide is really important to acknowledge in this word, and he asked why the word not yet the ecocide not yet in the literature and the convention. Maybe it's not stated as well as genocide. Maybe you can answer that question.
That is an example of what a great university law school this is. What a cool question. Wow. It makes me have chicken skin, they call it. You know, it makes me feel very excited to hear you ask that question. Because you are referring to the idea of ecocide, which is one of a couple of ideas that could be considered protections for you in the room, for young people. Ecocide makes criminal the destruction of the environment in a way that threatens the welfare of the people in that environment. And you also asked why? Why isn't ecocide yet a crime? And the answer is because the people in control of government, there's nobody that's in control of all of it, but the people in control of government don't want to create a new crime that's going to affect the empires. But that's changing. You asking me that question will help it change, because I'm doing my best to make sure we create the crime of ecocide. You're right, we should have it. Now, the way that ecocide is applied fairly is if you go to court and it's decided by a fair judge. In the United States, we have juries of citizens that can decide. But we need ecocide because it sends a message to the leaders of the empires. Excuse me, ecocide means the state goes to the top of the empire and proves that the person at the top of the empire meant to hurt you. In other words, if it can be proven that the top of one of these huge, wealthy organizations, like an oil company, that the directors knew that fire was going to take place, that forest was going to be burned so that they could take oil there. Or you had a big mining company that knew that forest was going to be burned so the mine could be put in. They can be put in jail, and that will change the behavior of the empires. And sometimes the proof might include burning down a forest, destroying a forest in violation of the law. But they have so much authority that they don't end up being held accountable. So ecocide is accountability. That's why it's so powerful. It's an instrument, a measure of accountability that's applied to the top of the empires. So thank you for the question. Did you have a follow-up question? You look like you wanted to say something.
Follow-up question, punya pertanyaan lanjutan atau ada pertanyaan lanjutan? Oh ya, boleh. Ada sedikit pertanyaan lanjutan ya. A bit of a follow-up question.
Thank you, sir. So, I'm sorry, I'm using Indonesian language. Jadi di Amerika Serikat sendiri, khususnya di Hawaii, itu juga belum mengakui hak ekosida sebagai pelanggaran HAM berat, betul? Dan apakah mungkin itu diakui, dan ketika itu diakui masuk ke dalam pengadilan HAM berat, apakah kemudian itu bisa jadi solusi? Karena tadi juga itu instrumen tertinggi gitu ya, karena sekarang udah sangat parah terkait dengan krisis iklim itu sendiri.
Okay, she wonder if in Hawaii the ecocide is accepted as the higher instrument. If Hawaii is accepted that ecocide as the highest instrument especially in court, and judges and attorney use that terms. So we maybe in Indonesia can follow maybe the ecocide terms in court judgment and attorney.
Your question about whether ecocide is yet a law in Hawaii is very exciting. We have people like yourself, young law students and young people that want ecocide. We are a state, as you saw, that protects now. This is one of the first, it was the first state to protect your right to a stable climate capable of supporting human life. This is the first state to declare a climate emergency. What I'm saying is our state is starting to think in a way that could make it the first state to have what? The first state to have ecocide. We could probably do that, and you could help. And if your class just got together a letter, let's say everybody in this room signed a letter to the University of Hawaii Law School saying we support you in creating and passing legislation so that ecocide is available to protect the earth. One sentence or two sentences like that. The newspapers would cover it. Is Indonesia bigger than Hawaii? I mean, you heard me talk about it. You're probably bored hearing me talk about how big you are, how important you are. So if you from Indonesia send this to Hawaii, our newspapers will think it's important, and it can help us. So it'd be nice to have a collaboration, and I will give you my card. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you. Shalom, it was such a great
So we'll be in contact. We'll work on that.
You can email Judge Wilson, maybe. You can email. She can.
Of course,
email
my
you.
email's there. My phone number. Just send me a message.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Maybe we only have 2 questions left, maybe, or because of the time. Can you choose 2 of them?
Wow.
It's a lot of.
Wow. Okay, you look very enthusiastic. Go ahead.
Okay, you
Yeah.
first introduce yourself. The mic, sorry.
Your questions are so good. This is an impressive law school.
This, maybe you can stand up. Then we can see you better.
Okay. Firstly, I'm very thank you for the very insightful lecture. My name is Felicia, and I would like to ask you a question. As I heard, United Nations Environment Program already continuously talking about the impact of fast fashion trend to our Earth, and become the second most dangerous trade pollution causing by the garment industry. But in Indonesia, we still depend very much to this industry. So far, the regulation here didn't really give so much impact and limitation towards this problem, so the environmental problem can be solved. So my question is, how can the law maintain a balance between our economic that is highly dependent on the development of this fashion industry without sacrificing the environment? But before that, I'm very sorry because after this, my friends and I really need to get back to the class, the next class, so we can't fully hear the full explanation towards this question. Thank you very much.
Wow, you should be a diplomat. You not only asked me a hard question, but then in a very nice way you said, don't talk so long. But people tell me that a lot. I talk too much. But I'll try to answer it quickly. First of all, you asked me, how could the law be used in a way that would balance the textile industry's interest in being in business with protecting the environment? And there is no question that there is a way that's not too hard to be able to do that. We have done amazing things as world communities, like put people on the moon. So the important thing is, now, like you, for example, you're young, you're embedded, you care about the issue, you're really focused on it, so you could be a leader on it. And if you get together and do ideas about what the best approach is, no doubt you'll come up with concepts like some substances are very dangerous, so they have to be treated that way. If you can protect the community from those substances, okay, maybe you can have an operation that does that. But if they're too dangerous, the fashion industry doesn't want them. Fashion industry doesn't want to hurt people. And the last thing I'll say about the fashion industry issue is you have the most powerful spokespeople and representatives maybe in the whole world. Who is the most popular woman in the world? If I ask that question in the United States, there'll be an answer. There are two women. One is Michelle Obama, and the other is Oprah. They would love to hear from you. Maybe Oprah will agree. And not just Oprah, pick your movie star. I don't know who your favorite female movie star is, but they're likely to help you too, because they want that industry that they're part of course, to contribute to the environment and not destroy it. So I wish you success. I don't have any question that you would be able to eventually do it.
Okay, thank you very much for the answer, sir.
I thought you were going to say the short answer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
The last question maybe on that links, not yet. Oh, 1, 2, 3. There's 4. Maybe you can choose one of them.
Well, I thought I see your hand's been up for a long time, and I'm pointing right to you. You're sort of middle, so why don't you go ahead? Yeah, we'll give you a microphone.
Okay.
Oh, well, then we'll have 2 questions. I'd love to hear your question too, but I was actually pointing to your colleague behind you.
Oh, okay. Yeah. But it's okay. We can. You can answer 2 questions maybe.
Yeah,
okay,
sure.
2 questions from 3 and behind.
I mean, I'm happy to stay here and answer all the questions. It's just a question of your time.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much for the opportunity, sir. My name is Tri Octaviati. I am in my 4th year majoring in law in Universitas Pajajaran. I would like to ask you some questions. In terms of mitigation of climate change and its intersection with human rights, many UN conventions related to the environment acknowledge the existence of the indigenous people. Indigenous people have a big part in the mitigation of climate change because they live their life by following how nature is and following the existing condition of the nature surrounding them. Maybe as an example, in Indonesia there is a tribe in South Papua named Auyo tribe. They are currently suing the government for issuing oil plantation by annexing their ancestral lands. Their lawsuit is based on climate change because of the deforestation of their ancestral lands. My questions are there some communities of indigenous people in Hawaii that their way of living contributes to the mitigation of the climate change, and how far the regulation within Hawaii protects their existence? That's my question. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for asking that question. And indigenous rights are now very important in Hawaii. We do have an indigenous community that is represented in government by the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. And I really like the person who's the chair, a really great Hawaiian woman whose name is Uhulu Lindsay. So I'll give you my information so we can be in contact, and I hope the Office of Hawaiian Affairs will send support for the indigenous community that's trying to protect itself. Okay?
Okay, thank
Thank
you
you
so
for
much.
the question. And we have one more question back.
Last
Yes.
question.
You have your
Sorry,
microphone?
that's the last question. Maybe you can ask the email.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Wilson, for the lecture. Actually, I'm very interested in environmental law, but I'm not actually really going deep into it. So I'd like probably also would like to ask you about a question about also about ecocide, since we know it's not fully accepted or considered as a violation of human rights, while we know that environment is something very essential in human lives. But if we talk about ecocide, then as you said before, it's talking about a crime. It's something probably a criminal. While we know that one of the most serious issues in the environmental thing is climate change. And climate change is, I see it as a global issue. So can we include climate change as an ecocide, but we don't really know who is going to be responsible or who should be responsible or liable in climate change issues, because as you said before, it involved many people, it involved many parties, such as, for example, the government or the empire, and it has many layers on it too, such as state economics need, but also someone said the question before, we have to, law has to be in between, like it has to balance between the environmental side, but also give the state benefits and the economic side, which is a hard thing. So how do we actually maintain it, especially about the climate change issues, since it's a global issue, but who should actually be responsible for it or could be held liable for it, since it's a serious issue, but I can't see like for a single person or party to be held responsible for it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for the question about holding accountable or responsible those that might commit ecocide. And it raises the question of what is ecocide about? And ecocide has already made the decision you're talking about. Ecocide is where the government says, this is an actor that's done something bad, and they need to be prosecuted. So your balancing is done by the government, and it's probably done in a way that's not too hard to agree with, right? If it turns out there's a group of actors that purposely go into business to cut down forests in a way that takes away the water for indigenous people, they don't have an excuse. They didn't have any legal justification. The more complicated issue is what you do in environmental cases that might involve destruction of the environment by somebody who didn't know what they were doing. Okay, well then maybe they won't be held responsible. We don't have to worry too much about that, because there are organizations that have great knowledge about what's happening and who's responsible. I can tell you about a hero of mine, I'm glad you asked that question, who is well known to my brother Peter Barnett here, who's one of the greatest lawyers in the United States on the issues of climate change and the environment. But he's part of a group that was created by somebody who has the quality to do what you're talking about. Be just. Look at a hard question and see that a lot of people are benefiting from the forest that was cut down because maybe soybeans or palm oil is being grown there. Maybe it was done illegally, but still, it's now employing thousands of people. So can you really prosecute the actors that cut down the forest? You need to understand, and judges represent this, somebody decides what's right and wrong. Now we have laws that apply, but you need to have an ethic like Mahatma Gandhi or an ethic like your greatest jurists. And the person that I'm referring to is a fellow named James Thornton. his idea of justice grew all around the world because his idea was just. He's a wonderful person who's courageous, but he's not irresponsible, and he doesn't operate out of hatred. He doesn't operate out of meanness. He's a good person, but he has a sense of righteousness or justice and wants to see the right thing being done. And he's not intimidated at all by the empires. The bigger the empires get, the more intimidating they can be. So you might want to look into Client Earth. He started Client Earth, and now it has grown, and it reflects his value system. Yeah, so I think we'll be able to work it out.
Okay, thank you very much for the answer.
Okay, sir. Actually, there's so many questions from the students, but most of all is on class in 11:50, right? If you mind, is there okay if they writing down the question and you will answer that? Okay. Or
I will give to your wonderful moderator my card, so if somebody wants to contact me with a question,
okay.
You can.
I can take a photo of your card maybe to send it to a student. Okay. Okay. If any answer, you can email Judge Wilson, and I will take a photo of his card, and I will send it to you. Okay. Okay, with the end of the question and answer discussion, the public lecture has been held, has also ended. Thank you very much, Judge Wilson, for the insightful lecture and encourage the student to take a part to tackle the climate change. And thank you for all participants for your attention and fascinating discussions today. Maybe you will.
Yeah, I was just going to say that
okay.
This is really impressive, and I think it might have to do with how nice this place is. At the University of Hawaii Law School, the seats are kind of hard. And I don't think they would have stayed, those students would have stayed as long as you did. But thank you. It's so nice of you to stay here with me. I really appreciate it. I know you guys are busy, so thank you.
Thank you so much. I will give it back to the Master of Ceremony, Miss Nisa, please.
Okay, thank you, Ibu Yulindo, for leading our public lecture today. And thank you very much for our speaker today, Judge Wilson. That's a very awesome spirit and experience that you have shared with us today. Okay, before we finish our public lecture, first of all, I will remind to all students to access this barcode for presence today. Maybe the operator can help us to give the barcode first. You can scan this barcode for your presence today. Okay, before I close this public lecture, maybe if you don't mind, we can I will call all the participants and invited guests to take a picture and documentation first. Maybe students, lecturer, and we can take a picture with our speakers today. Hey, come.
Silakan. Mahasiswa yang tersisa, silakan untuk maju ke depan.